he's receiving the very best care from the excellent medical team at St Thomas's Hospital. He remains stable overnight. He's receiving standard oxygen treatment and breathing without any assistance. He's not required any mechanical ventilation or non-invasive respiratory support. He remains in good spirits, and in keeping with usual clinical practice, his progress continues to be monitored closely in critical care.
As you heard there, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson remains in hospital in intensive care. Johnson, who is just 55 years old, is receiving oxygen but is said to be breathing on his own and be in stable condition. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who is deputizing for Johnson, says he's, quote, confident the Prime Minister will recover from the infection. When might that be, though? And how is Britain coping without its leader? Susan Lejeune-Daldersac is the UK High Commissioner to Canada. She joins us now, I think, from her home. Hello, High Commissioner.
Hi, from my home.
From your home. Nice to see you. Thanks for making time for us.
It's a pleasure.
I want to start off by asking, of course, about the condition of the Prime Minister. What can you tell us about that?
Well, he's not getting any worse, which is reassuring. But, you know, you don't get taken into intensive care unless you're really ill. So it's worrying, and all of us are hoping that he gets better very soon. And I wanted to thank everybody in Canada who sent their best wishes, including your Prime Minister, for a speedy recovery.
We saw yesterday, for example, when the announcement was made that the Prime Minister was moved into intensive care, and even when he was first admitted to hospital, that it seemed pretty surprising given it was 10 days after he was initially diagnosed with the virus, and he had so far communicated that the symptoms were not too severe. Were you taken by surprise?
I think lots of people were, but I think that's one of the things about this virus is that it can take us by surprise. And people who are, as you said, in good health and young, like the Prime Minister, can have these sudden declines. And that's quite clearly what happened in this case. So I think it just underlines to me that nobody's immune from it. And we all have to be very careful. But it was a surprise and a shock, yeah.
Has there been any communication around, and obviously I get it's a fluid situation, but around how long the Prime Minister might be in the ICU, anything like that?
No, there hasn't. And I think the one thing that's very clear is that he has to stay there until he's a lot better than he is now. Luckily, as you said, we have Dominic Raab, my boss, the Foreign Secretary, in charge. And many of the big things that had to be done and the direction that we had to take had already been defined before the Prime Minister was admitted to hospital. So Dominic Raab is now overseeing the delivery of the decisions that were taken in the last couple of weeks.
Practically speaking, does that mean that Secretary Raab isn't going to be making the actual decisions if there should be other ones that have to be made? How does it work?
Well, I mean, it's quite an unusual situation for us, but Dominic Raab, as the what they call the first Secretary of State, is de facto the Deputy Prime Minister, and so he will be chairing cabinet meetings and other meetings. But I don't think there are any major decisions that we have to take now. But obviously, yes, the cabinet together, collectively, will take a decision if new decisions have to be taken.
And if there isn't consensus, I'm just wondering how it works. If there isn't consensus, does he have the ability to then make the call?
Well, I think that's a hypothetical question, but I mean, he has been asked by the Prime Minister to take the decisions on his behalf. So I'm assuming that would happen, but we're not in that position at the moment. The Prime Minister is able to take decisions. He's deputised the running of the country to Dominic Raab for the moment. That's
kind of my follow-up question. Even though he is in the ICU, does he have the ability to weigh in?
He's certainly he's not unconscious or anything like that, but I think it's very clear that he's not in the best of health. So I think he's doing not much, but he's certainly not completely divorced from the decision making and everything that's happened.
What about the state of the spread of the virus in the UK right now? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think it's following very much the same path as it has elsewhere. I mean, I think the perception is, or the understanding is, that we're a couple of weeks behind France and Spain and Italy. Things are really bad. You know, large numbers of people are dying, and it is terrible. Our health service at the moment is coping well. We have enough equipment, and we are making sure that frontline NHS staff are tested and so on in order to enable them to get to work. but it's a frightening and horrifying situation. And we're also in a state of almost complete lockdown. So there are very few people out and about, and people on the whole are following the instructions that they've been given. And I think that is allowing us to, as far as possible, flatten the curve. I don't think the doctors and specialists think we're through the worst of it quite yet, but they think we're on the right trajectory to get there fairly soon.
Given the unique relationship between the UK and the EU, and given the export controls that a lot of the EU has placed on PPE, what is the latest you can tell us about the UK being able to secure that from other places in the EU?
I think at the moment we are getting the equipment that we need, and that de facto we're still part of the European Union. So I think that's okay. But obviously, if it goes on for a lot longer and gets a lot worse, the UK, like every other country, will be looking to source more equipment. And I think one of the important things at the moment is that countries that are producing this stuff do not put unnecessary controls in place to stop countries which might need it more from acquiring that sort of equipment.
And by those countries, do you mean the EU? Do you mean the US? What do you mean?
I think any country that is producing it, which has a less acute need, needs to be very clear about supplying it to the countries that have the greatest need.
And how has all of this affected your ability to do your job, or in what way have things changed?
Things have changed in that I'm sitting at home when I would normally be in the office. But I think one of the great things about this happening now is that technology actually allows us to do many of the things that we would do face to face at a distance. And one of my main concerns is also the welfare of the people who I have working in my team. So we actually, in some strange ways, probably talk to each other more than we would do under normal circumstances. So I think I can do a lot of what I do normally. What I'm not doing is going out and visiting other parts of the country. So that's a bit of a drawback, because my job is to be High Commissioner to the whole of Canada, not just to the city where I happen to live. But otherwise, I think we're coping quite well with it. And I do think that it's making us be a bit more innovative in some of the things that we're doing.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this evening, High Commissioner. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
UK High Commissioner to Canada, Susan Lejeune-Daljersek. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.